Your review is now loading.
Welcome to Anime Review. Slowly! Am I internet famous yet? When Gurren Lagann first came out in 2007, it was all over the place. Seriously, you couldn't even talk about anime without it coming up, or go to a con without seeing half a dozen Kaminas and Yokos around every corner. At the time, fanboys everywhere were swearing up and down that this was the show that was going to save anime. So it's been about 8 years since then, and we've all had time to let the chaos settle and really look back to find out if they were right. So without further ado, let's jump right into the anime that saved anime. Tengen's Toppa Gurren Lagann. Our story opens in a small underground village called Jiha, which looks more like a prison than a village, but let's roll with it. Here, humans have lived for 1,000 years completely unaware that above ground lies... Nope, no Disney. They will claim copyright faster than I can finish this.
Here's your subpoena.
Yep, that's about right. Our story follows Simone, a young digger living in Jiha Village, but the thing about Simone is that he's not just any digger, he's the best digger in all the land! Expanding more area than guys 2 and 3 times his age. That doesn't make sense. What the fuck? That is, until he discovers something while digging that causes him to stop. He digs around the object only to discover that it's a small glowing drill. Because everything in this anime is a drill. This is a drill, that's a drill, he's a drill, she's a drill, I'm a drill. That doesn't make sense. Dude. He heads home getting made fun of on the way by the girls of the village.
Tiny drill.
And ends up with a face full of big bro dick in the form of our other main character, Kamina. Kamina was out looking for his bro, Simone, who he is in no way related to, even though these two characters are the only two in the entire series who look even remotely related, except for these two. That doesn't make sense. But anyways, Simone shows Kamina his little drill. And Kamina informs Simone that he and said little drill will pierce the heavens. Simone, much like the audience, has no idea what the hell Kamina is talking about until Kamina informs Simone that just outside their village ceiling lies a different world. A world that Kamina saw years ago as a child with his father, who managed to escape to the surface. Kamina, planning to follow in his father's footsteps, invites Simone into his group, Team Gurren. With the help of the rest of Team Gurren, whose names could literally not matter any less, Simone and Kamina hatch a plan to use a whip made of pig moles to ride their way to victory. That doesn't make sense. Okay, you know what? Do you have something to say, asshole?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. First off, how can a child do more physical labor than an adult? Secondly, how can everything be a drill? And third, no!
Logic has no place in this because, as Kamina says,
kick logic out and do the impossible!
Anyways, like I was saying, they use a pig mole whip to try and escape, only to have their hopes come crashing back to Under-Earth when the village warden, chief, katana slaps them out of the sky. Captured and defeated, Team Gurren quickly turns on Kamina and rats him out. All that is, except for Simone, who refuses to betray his big bro. But Kamina isn't having any of that and takes full responsibility, getting locked up for his troubles. Simone decides to try and break his big bro out of lockup and gets to digging, coming face to face with a face in the process. He continues on his way, nearly castrating Kamina in his rescue attempt. The two then head out so Simone can show Kamina his discovery, but are stopped by the village warden, who beats Kamina with a katana for his insolence. But Kamina is too much of a man to feel pain and brushes it off when all of a sudden, the plot comes crashing through the ceiling. The village is stunned to discover a giant face has come crashing into their home, and then even more surprised when Kamina snatches up the chief's katana and goes to fight it all on his own. But as it turns out, Kamina has backup in the form of a young girl who jumps in through the hole in the ceiling and informs them that that giant face is actually a mech called a gunman, and that she fights them on the surface. The trio group up to go find the face that Simone had previously discovered, thinking it'll somehow help the situation? Simone hops in the face's head, which doubles as a cockpit, and slowly, his little drill starts glowing. You heard me. Anyways, it turns out that little drill was actually the key to operating this thing. Score 1 for random happenstance. Simone inserts his tiny drill into the face, as you do, sending the 4 of them careening out of the tunnel and towards the giant gunman. Kamina, being Kamina, declares that their new mech's name will be Lagann, and that with it, they will defeat the giant gunman. Through some more crazy random happenstance, Simone discovers that the Lagann has a drill of its own, and using that drill not only destroys the giant gunman, but sends himself, Kamina, and the girl Yoko soaring into the sky to catch a glimpse of the brave new world that awaits them all. And that is where our story begins. Now, before we jump into the animation, I have to mention a very minor spoiler. You see, halfway through the series, we have a rather large time skip, and I wouldn't even bring it up except for the fact that it kinda changes everything, animation included. For the first half of our series, the animation is, well, it's fully coolly. Bright colors, forced perspectives, animation loops, the whole 9. And for a while, it works really well with the tone. The problem, however, is that when Fully Cooley used animation loops and frame skips, they almost always did it during humorous moments, where Gurren Lagann also chooses to use it during action, and upon repeated viewings, makes it look kinda cheap. Not that the entirety of the animation is cheap, it works, but when they use frame skips and loops during the action, well, it's pretty obvious. Also, there's episode 4. For those who don't know, episode 4 is an animation train wreck. The studio switched animators for this episode, and it did not go over well. All the lines are choppy, and the motion has almost no fluidity to it at all. Not to mention Kamina's mouth looks like it was drawn by an 80-year-old woman with cataracts and arthritis having a seizure. Honestly, I could have done a better job animating his mouth than they did in this episode. See? Now, when I first saw this series, I preferred the animation for the first half over the second half, but upon repeated viewings, I feel like that's changed. The second half is much cleaner and more modern, with good reason. You see, in the first half, Simone was a boy, and the animation reflected this by being choppy and bright and over the top, like a child would see things. But in the second half, he's matured, and with him, so has the animation. It's digital, more refined, adult. The series literally grew up with Simone, and it reflects that in its very animation, which I think is not only original, but kind of genius. The audio, on the other hand, is far less problematic. I enjoyed the entire soundtrack, particularly the opening song Sorairo Days and the main theme Liberami from Hell. The ending songs, for me at least, weren't as strong, but I do have to appreciate them for not being the average melancholy endings that we hear from every anime ever. They're upbeat, high energy, and match the tone of the series, much like the show's spiritual predecessor, Fully Cooley. Our intro and outro also have a really good sense of the show's tone and are incredibly eye-catching. The voice acting was also surprisingly above par, with Kyle Herbert, Yuri Lowenthal, and Michelle Ruff comprising our 3 main characters, Simone, Kamina, and Yoko, respectively. All of them did a great job, although I will say that Yuri's kid Simone sounded a little bit like a full-grown man trying to sound like a kid. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Steve Bloom's role as the effeminate scientist Liron, a role that really goes to show the man's insane range, although for some reason isn't credited to him on his IMDb page. Weird. The rest of the cast was also pretty spot on, creating a dub that, dare I say, can actually hold its own against the original. For our cast of characters, we begin with Simone, the young boy thrust headfirst into an insane world that he and his friends have been tasked with saving. Now, this character type is a trope that Gainax just loves to use. See Evangelion or Fully Cooley for reference. But this show handles it a little bit differently. You see, while Simone starts off as a reluctant hero, he doesn't stay that way like other characters might. He actually grows throughout the series into an interesting and likable protagonist. He doesn't spend the series trying to run away from his problems like Shinji or pretend they're not there like Naota. He faces his fears with determination, and I have to respect that. The rest of the series seems to revolve around Simone's perspective, from the animation change as he gets older to the obvious metaphor of him finding his drill at about the same time he would be discovering sexuality, but more on the puberty stuff later. Next up we have Kamina, everyone's favorite character. If you looked up manly in the dictionary, it would be a picture of this guy eating bacon while shooting off an automatic rifle into the whimpering face of Godzilla, surrounded by all of your waifus while Chuck Norris prays to him for strength. Now, aside from sheer badassery, Kamina acts as the leader of Team Gurren and Simone's mentor. While admittedly being a bit pig-headed, he still manages to get things done, albeit in his own way, against any and all odds, and that pretty much sums up his character in a nutshell. He doesn't back down from a fight, going as far as to challenge a gunman with nothing more than a katana, not to mention the fact that he's loyal to a fault and competitive, possibly to his own detriment. If I had to sum up his character in one word, it would be leader. But if I had to sum up his character in 2 words, it would be blindly confident. So, take your pick. And lastly, for our main cast, we have the prettiest plot device in all the land. Yoko. She comes from the sky, toting a sniper rifle like the Angel of Death, and kickstarts our story by showing our dynamic duo that Kamina was in fact right all along, and that there is more to their world than this little village. Then she promptly becomes the most useless character in the entire show. Whoa! 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 Jesus Christ, let me explain. Let me explain. Let me explain. Let me explain. What you, there we go. Let me explain. It's not that she's entirely useless, because yes, she does have a few isolated instances of usefulness, but she's useful in the same way that a Lamborghini is. And yes, I do realize I just compared a girl to a car, but stick with me, because I think this might be one of the very few times where the metaphor holds some weight. You see, the thing about a Lamborghini is that while it's incredibly attractive, once you're around one long enough, that initial shine starts to wear off, and you begin to realize that your car is just that, a car. A device meant to move you from point A to point B. You may call it Bessie, or in this case Yoko, but in reality it has no personality, no development. It's not a person, no matter how attractive it is. And that's basically the same for our femme fatale. I mean, we know she came from a neighboring village to the surface and fights gunmen, but why? What makes her do that? Why did she join up with Kamina and Simone? What is her past, or any of her goals for that matter? What drives her? No pun intended. These things are important when creating a character. You have to be able to describe them based on more than just appearance, but with Yoko, that becomes kind of challenging. Sure, she's the catalyst for the entire show, and from time to time can even get a clean shot off with her sniper rifle. But there are multiple fights wherein this warrior woman just sits on the sidelines. It seems like she's only utilized when it serves the plot or another character and is forgotten about the rest of the time, or just shown for fan service, and this problem persists and grows throughout the entirety of the show. She gets us from point A to point B, but then the shine wears off. Okay, you may resume shooting. For the side characters, I'm gonna kinda skim this section since the majority of them don't get much in the way of development. We start off with the members of Team Gurren, like the Meathead twins who are usually good for a laugh, the black siblings who show up from time to time to help out, this mechanic couple, this smoking guy, this green-haired guy, this Muppet, this pig mole, Chain Wu Fai, and the aforementioned Liron, played by Steve Bloom. Of the group, the only ones really worth going into depth on are Kitan, Liron, and Rossiu, with the rest having some good moments, but nothing really spectacular. Kitan is the head of the black siblings, with the other 3 members being his younger sisters. The quartet met with Team Gurren early on, and Kitan developed a begrudging mutual respect with Kamina and the others. Rossiu, or Chain Wu Fai as I called him, is a little bitch that lives underground and prays to a gunman. Whatever. And Liron is a skillful scientist and engineer who seems to be either a very offensive stereotype of homosexuals, or a pedophile, or a snake man. Is that fucking Snake Man? As for the villains, we have the Beastmen, a race of humanimals that pilot gunmen and seem to have a hard-on for people killing. Now there's way too many of them to list, so I'm only gonna be talking about 2, those being Viral and the Spiral King. Viral is a kind of sergeant or something in the Beastmen army who has a fight early on with Kamina and decides that the 2 of them will be rivals for the rest of their lives. Get it? Viral? Rival? Anagrams? Huh? See, the thing that is so interesting to me about Viral isn't just the rivalry between him and Kamina. I could go to Kitan for that. It's how, even though he is surrounded by Beastmen who want nothing more than to kill Kamina and the others, that's not his endgame. Viral wants to beat Kamina fair and square because unlike other Beastmen, Viral has a sense of honor that sets him apart from the rest of his kind, and this sense of honor is a part of him throughout the entire series, shaping his character in a way that very few others in the series get. And because of that, Viral, to me at least, might just be the best character in the entire series. Our other prominent villain is the Spiral King. All I can really say about him is that he's the leader of the Beastmen and the reason that things are so fucked on the surface. Although, he's not your average villain, and suffice to say, I do kinda dig what they do with him. And then there's Nia. What can I even say about Nia? She's Starfire. Like, literally, same voice actress, same character. I should probably say more, huh? Damn. Nia is a character who, while being intelligent, is still very naive of the ways of the world and humanity at large. She's a very giving and loving character at her core, but only interesting due to the circumstances surrounding her. And while she has a few memorable moments in the show, most of them are due to misunderstandings or her mannerisms. She has some endearing moments, but very little development overall, which makes me indifferent towards her. It seems to me that she, like Yoko, is mostly just there to move the plot along.
Now I see! You are a pissing off person!
Speaking of plot, I realized upon my second viewing that I actually kinda like the back half more. See, the thing about the first half in terms of story is that I didn't like it. It was a waste of time. That's it. Review over. 0 out of 10. Go home. You see, once we hit the second half, things start moving a lot faster and the story starts to get explained. The problem with that is that it should have started in episode fucking 2. Instead of explaining the story or progressing the plot, the first half decided not to do that, and instead wasted multiple episodes on literal throwaway villains. Most fights play out something like a Captain Planet episode wherein the villain loses, shouts, "You'll pay for this, Captain Planet!" and then comes back in the next episode just to be defeated again, only this time for good. What the fuck is the point of that? Most of these characters don't even get a damn backstory, so why waste 2 episodes on them when you could be explaining the story to us, or developing characters like Yoko who barely get any development? It doesn't make any sense. It is literally wasting time. Then there's the fact we have not 1, but 2 fan service episodes. Now you all already know my thoughts about fan service a dozen times over, but this isn't even about my personal aversion to it, because even I realize that from time to time a show needs to relieve tension, and more often than not, that's how anime chooses to do it. Fruits Basket had a Hot Springs episode, Ava had a beach episode, hell, even Another had a fan service episode. That's fine, but Gurren Lagann doesn't just have a Hot Springs episode or a beach episode. It has both, and that is 2 episodes wasted on trying to relieve tension in a show that is constantly relieving tension with its humor and Yoko's magical flopping clavicle sax. It's unnecessary and just another example of how this show loves to waste. Oh my god, is that Ray and Asuka? Also, there's a recap episode halfway through, you know, for all that story we didn't get. Honestly, I kind of felt like the first half of the series was just a chore to get through. But then the second half shows up. The second half, like the animation, is much tighter and not only makes, but kind of saves this show. It gives us more plot development, more character development, and in my opinion, one of, if not the best fight scenes in any anime ever. Plus, I loved how it wrapped everything up. But one thing both seasons handle extremely well is the show's themes. Now this show has multiple themes, from the aforementioned puberty subtext to being a retelling of one of the most iconic stories in history, the hero's journey. I'll primarily be focusing on the puberty stuff here since Digibro's video already covered the hero's journey stuff way more in depth than I would in this review. So let's do a quick rundown of some of the puberty stuff. First off, we have the drills.
The
Drill!
is my penis.
We have Yoko, or Simone's sexual awakening, showing up right after a group of girls ostracize him. We have the overly sexualized Leron making passes at both Kamina and Simone's drill getting bigger the more confident he gets, not to mention the myriad of jokes. And I guess a case could be made for the pig mole being his spirit animal, since a pig is a negative term for a sexually deviant male, and moles burrow. But that might be looking too deep into it. Suffice to say, the subtext is all there and it's not hard to find, but if I was being honest with myself, I'd have to say that this theme in particular is handled better in the first half of the show than it is in the second. Also, his name is like a syllable away from semen. I had to point that out. So with all that being said, did Gurren Lagann save anime? Well, to answer that question, first we have to ask another one. Did anime need saving? Gurren Lagann came out in 2007, the same year that shows like Death Note and Code Geass were ending their runs, and shows like Baccano, Clannad, Claymore, and Nodama Cantabile were beginning theirs. And regardless on your personal thoughts on any of these shows, all of them were, and remain to this day, beloved by both fans and critics alike. So no, I don't think anime needed saving, and to be honest, I still don't. So if Gurren Lagann's purpose was never to save anime, then what was it? My personal opinion is that Gurren Lagann is, and was always meant to be, fan service. And no, I don't just mean Yoko's boobs, although, yeah, those helped. I mean, this show is fan service in every definition of the word, from the bombastic fight scenes, to the over-the-top characters, to the mechs, and yes, the boobs. The entire thing was a love letter, from Gainax to the fans. A thank you Hell, they even had characters from their most famous works make cameos in bunny outfits. The entire series screams fan service, all the way from the mere existence of Yoko to the over-the-top ridiculous conclusion. So maybe Gurren Lagann didn't save anime, but so what? Even with all of its faults, this show is amazing for all of the right reasons, and in my opinion stands next to Evangelion and Code Geass as one of the few mecha shows that you'll enjoy regardless of whether or not you're into the genre. And that pretty much says it all. And that's it for me, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and if you want to see more, subscribe. And for all my awesome subscribers, I got a little surprise for you. Unless you read the title, in which case, less a surprise and more what you've probably been waiting for this entire video. It's giveaway time, bitches! All you have to do is leave a comment down below and you'll be automatically entered to win this special edition Gurren Lagann DVD, complete with the first 9 episodes of Gurren Lagann, and an audio CD, so you can pierce the heavens wherever CDs are played. Also, I made a companion video where I get a bit more in depth and talk about some of the spoilers that I couldn't mention here, so if you've already seen the show, or you just don't give a damn about spoilers, click right here to check it out. And that's it for me, guys. For reals this time. Thanks for watching.